When you come home, you don't just go, "Have you done this?" or "Did you do that?" or
Mhm.
"What is going on with the kids?" Look at each other. Say hi. How have you been? Hard day, huh? We're about to deal with an absolute shitstorm, aren't we? After school, you say something like, "When mommy was at work today and she was having lunch, she almost couldn't think. I mean, she almost couldn't concentrate because she just missed you so much. And I was thinking about what's my little girl doing right now? What's my little boy?"
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Sassy Moms. I'm Wendy.
And I'm Anya, and today we have very exciting episode as we have a first guest who is Dad, Todd Sarner. He is also a psychotherapist and parenting coach and a director and founder of Transformative Parenting. Todd, you are our first dad.
I
Excited?
feel
Oh.
I feel so honored. I hope I can live up to the billing. First dad, I hope I can do good with it. I've actually been told that a couple times. People have booked me on a couple things, and we only have women usually, or only have moms. I'm like, cool. I'm
Glad to
glad to break some ground with you.
Yeah, this episode honestly is very important for me because I have never told this, but one of my biggest parenting goal is to actually grow a securely attached and psychologically healthy child. And
Mm.
I bet that many moms and fathers want the same. So we hope to find some answers on, how to do this.
I hope to provide some.
Yeah, perfect. So let's go. Maybe you can, quickly give us some information about your background as well as your interest in parenting, like psychology. Let's start from there.
Okay, great. Yeah, my interest in psychology started when I was a teenager myself, and my parents had kind of a messy divorce, and we all had to go see counselors because I guess a family court judge was concerned that my parents were fighting so much that that we might be in trouble. So we went individually, and I loved it, and I just thought it was the greatest thing in the world. Dr. Diner, Marty Diner, in San Jose, California, Silicon Valley, where I grew up. He's no longer with us, but I just thought it was great. And so throughout my teenage years and into grad school, I thought I want to work with kids and I want to be that guy, you know? And I worked in group homes with teenage boys. I worked in foster and adoptive care. I did all sorts of roles with kids, but then first becoming a dad myself, and then becoming mentored by Dr. Neufeld, a fellow Vancouverite. Do you say Vancouverite or what do you say? Vancouverian? You guys,
Holding my boy.
Neufeld, who was a professor there at UBC forever, he mentored me and took me under his wing when my son was little. My son is now 22, about a week ago. And that combined with the experience of working with families, and they would come in a lot. A family would come in to wherever I was working, and they would always blame everything on one of the kids. Like they would say it's Bobby's problem. Bobby's causing problems. Fix Bobby. And I would always have this sense that I'm not here to judge anyone, but I don't think it's Bobby's problem. I think Bobby is just showing the symptoms of the system. The canary in the coal mine. Like people say. So all those things together, I think I'm going to answer your question, led to me just going, I don't think I'm going to work with kids. I think I'm going to work with the parents. That that again, I'm a parent, I'm a human being. I don't judge people unless they're being abusive, things like this, but I don't judge people for being imperfect. But I don't I think it's the parent's job and the parent's responsibility to be the leader for the child in most cases, that they're the one who is wired to their kid. They're the one who's the mom, the dad. They're the one who's the most important person to this child. I want to empower that person, right? And becoming a dad kind of reinforced that for me. I'm like, I don't want anyone else to be my kid's answer, you know? So there are places, I think, for child therapy for sure. I certainly appreciated it myself. But yeah, my mission has been to help kids by helping their parents. And so on the one hand, I started transformative parenting and I do a parent coaching process. I call it a process. It's a 3-month intensive program with parents where we go over these 3 realms. Maybe we'll talk about it later of attachment and connection, environment and regulation, and behavior and discipline. And it's like a coaching, education, personal process. But then in the other hat I wear, the other main hat I wear is as a couples counselor who only works with parents. So in both ways, I'm trying to help the kid, but I'm trying to help the kid by helping the parent either with their parenting or their relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I actually really appreciate this, perspective that you shared. Because I think for me, I think we mentioned it a few times already. I don't think like there's no playbook to be a parent.
Mm-mm.
Like,
No.
like I got
Everyone says it right, but it's still true.
yeah, it's like there's in business, right? Like there's a lot usually like you can test out these things, but it's like it's different human beings, right? Like I have 3 kids and each of them
Yeah.
are very, very different. I can't apply the same playbook you so call to the other kid. So with that, like I'm actually really curious. Like I really love this perspective because I do find like I need to learn even myself, like being a parent, like there's so many different learnings I can
Oh
do.
yeah.
So what are the things that like would be really helpful for like a first time mom? Like what are some of the perspective that they need to change that it's like, hey, it's not the kid, but it's like something I need to learn as a parent.
Oh gosh, there could be so many things, and maybe we'll just work it
Mhm.
out, the 3 of us, and we'll figure out some examples and things like this. You know, I, I tell people all the time, by the time I became a parent, I had a good, healthy 6-figure investment in my education about becoming a counselor, a psychotherapist, a family therapist. I had worked for years with kids and families and group homes, and like I said, all these things. I had taken all the classes, very expensive private graduate school, and I was sitting here and I had a kid. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I don't, you know. And I remember back to like developmental psychology class in grad school. I had a brilliant professor, Alan Kubler from England, brilliant guy. And he's like, here's a theory, and here's a theory, and here's a theory, and here's a theory, all about child development and how kids grow and things. And I'm like, okay, I remember that. I did well in that. I studied that, but I didn't get a roadmap. I didn't get like, but this is what you do, right? And so I guess I would always start off with the place of find a roadmap, find a good roadmap. I think parenting too often is like problem solution, problem solution, problem solution, right? And you said it beautifully, Wendy. Like I make that point every day. You could be the same parent in the same spouse in the same house in the same philosophy or parenting style or whatever, and your kids are all different. So they're all going to respond differently to what you do, you
Mhm.
know? And so what do you do then? So my roadmap, if it doesn't sound too self-involved, but the thing that I found helps, and I think people can study it on their own, is those 3 realms. That the overarching thing I say to parents is your child needs you to be an alpha parent. And what we mean by that is not a dictator, right? A lot of times people talk about alpha bros or alpha this or alpha that in the business world. But alpha doesn't mean dictator. Alpha doesn't mean jerk. Alpha means you're a papa bear. You're a mama bear. You're a leader. You're a benevolent leader. You're not perfect, but you're in charge, right? Not in charge oppressing my children, but in charge taking the lead. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the overall main goal. When I start with parents, they're not feeling that way. When I end with parents, I want them feeling that way. I don't want them feeling I'm perfect and I have solved every problem forever. I just want them feeling like I got this, right? Because that attitude of I got this and I'm your answer and I'm going to be the leader that you need is the main thing kids need. So everything I teach is about how to accomplish that. And so if you don't mind a little bit of a longer answer, because maybe it gives us some other things to talk about,
Yeah, yeah.
is I would say understand that the first thing is attachment. You mentioned it. What is healthy attachment? When children are born, they're born completely insecure. And this is deeper than psychology and emotion. This is survival. When kids are born, they are not sure you exist when you leave the room, and it terrifies them sometimes. Okay? That's like where they're born, that's where they start. And then by the time we send them off into the world, we want them to feel a certain confidence, a certain thing that Mary Ainsworth, up here on my wall, called in John Bowlby, the originator of attachment theory, right next to her in the middle. Sorry, if you're listening, I'm pointing to pictures on my wall. Um, I
I
do
love that,
YouTube
all of
videos in
them.
here, so I have some of my parenting heroes back here, my
Yeah,
psychology heroes.
I love
But
that.
they called it a secure base. That by the time we send our kids off into the world, and this is what you mentioned, about wanting to create a securely, that was you, Anna, right?
Yeah,
You said
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Okay.
Really.
Um, a securely attached kid. That is a process that by the time they go off into the world, they're not perfect, but they're kind of like, I'm good. I like myself. I I want to be with other people that like themselves and are secure. Not perfect, right? But and I want to create good relationships because I'm not trying to accomplish some weird thing about solving my childhood. I just want to like be myself and be healthy. That is a long process that the best parents will struggle with sometimes, you know? Think about yourself, guys. You two, Wendy and Anna, but also the listeners. Think about your journey, you know, and how secure or insecure you felt. And so the first thing I say is understand that attachment comes first. Don't ever assume your relationship with your kid because of brain development issues and situational things. They don't always feel connected to you. So always get connected first. That is one of the bottom line first things I teach everyone. Get their eyes, get their smile, get their nod, get connected to them. And you're supposed to do that with your spouse too. Okay. I'm also a marriage counselor. When you come home, you don't just go, have you done this? Or did you do that? Or what is going on with the kids? Look at each other. Say hi. How have you been? Hard day, huh? We're about to deal with an absolute shitstorm, aren't we? Can I curse? We're about to deal with three kids that are going crazy right now and stuff, you know? And we're a team, right? Yeah, we're a team. Can I have a hug? Let's have a hug. Start there. And you're supposed to start there. And also with your kids, you don't tell them what to do before connecting. So I say start off with knowing you have to be connected first. Then I would say in the second realm, build structures and rituals and predictability in your home life, in your family. So kids know we do this and we do this, not rigid jail scheduling, but just that we know we do this and we do this. And on Wednesdays after school, we go to the park and then we go to the store. And at night, we do this and this and this. Most parents I meet do some of it, but they don't do enough of it. That helps you so much. You know, how do kindergarten teachers survive with 20 or 30 kids? They have lots of structure and ritual and they're alpha. Does this all make sense?
Yeah,
Totally.
I wonder
And then
why.
the third the go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering like why those rituals help. Like what happens in a child's brain that, helps them to.
It's so much, but it's just don't you feel better when you know what's going to happen? You know?
I mean, yeah.
Like I used to work, and I know this is an extreme example, guys, but when I worked in a group home with like sometimes very, very emotionally unstable teenage boys, they had a really good environment in some of the places I worked. They had equine therapy programs. They had a good school. They lived in a beautiful area. We were really trying to take care of them. But the times we had blowouts with children, with these teenage boys, was when they didn't know what was going on next. When they had
Mm.
an hour or two to sit alone in their room with their thoughts, you know? There's a famous quote about that. I can't remember which philosopher said it, but he said, most of men's problems stem from the inability to sit alone in a room with your thoughts, you know? I
Mhm.
would say feelings. But the whole point of that is it's anxiety provoking sometimes. It's anxiety provoking not to know what's happening next. But you know what happens a lot with more practically with young kids is if they don't know what's going to happen next, they assume what's going to happen next based on what you did yesterday or what they want to do. And then they get locked into that. And then when you say something else, then they get upset. That makes
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just there's something about rituals. Dr. Neufeld went to France for a year with his family, and he said at the end of it, he said, what was your favorite part, guys? Was it this travel or this skiing or this food or this, that, and whatever? And every single person in the family said, it was when we got together at the end of the day and had a family dinner and we just sat there for hours and you read stories out of a book to us and whatever, right? It's
Yeah.
because it's just so relieving to know, oh, this is what we do and this is what we do. So there's just something about that that is reassuring, and there's something about the absence of it that is anxiety provoking.
Hmm. Todd, I really love that. And I love the kind of approach that you took. So my question, like I want to be that confident leader, for my kid, right?
Hmm.
But as a busy mom who's, trying to get out the door, trying to get my kids doing stuff, I can't always be that confident leader because I kind of resort back to like, like just, hey, just get these things done. I can't connect with them first. I can't do all of that because, sometimes it just doesn't happen. How do I get past that? Because I think I'm kind of like stuck in this cycle of like, hey, I need to get out the door. I need to be quick. I need to do all these things. And it's like, I can't always connect first.
There are quick answers that I think are good answers, and then there's the actual truth, which is more what I'm trying to say. And just for the listeners who might have realized that I didn't say the third realm. I'll say that really quickly. First realm is attachment and connection. Second is ritual and environment. Regulation and environment. And the third is behavior and discipline. Because I know if I was listening, I'd be like, what was the third thing he was going to say? Now, my my long answer, Wendy, is you have to build out a system. And if you build out a system, like I'm trying to explain, that in general, we usually connect with each other first when we can. In general, we have a predictability and a rhythm to when we do things and when we're going to go out the door and stuff. And in general, if I've been kind of connecting enough, maybe not in this moment because I'm hurried, but in general, your attachment needs are met and the environment needs are met, that moment is going to go better most of the time. It just is. But when it's not, you just have to accept it and just go, I can't do it right now. But please also accept that your child is going to react to that. And it doesn't make you an awful mom or parent, hopefully there's some of us dads listening too. But it just means, hey, if this is happening every day, you probably need to change some structural things instead of seeing it as just that moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's why I try, like, it's so much easier to give you a one, two, three answer or do a quick, 60-second video on it, but it's not true. And it makes people feel worse about themselves because they say that guy on TikTok or that guy on Instagram or that woman on Facebook said to do this thing and I tried it and it didn't work. It must be me. But it's because it's a symptom of a bigger problem. So I would say, Wendy, in general, if you're trying your best and you're trying to walk in the direction of getting better at these things and correcting them, then that moment you just have to accept and go, okay, because your kid is probably having separation anxiety in the moment. They're probably just wanting to stay connected to you, right? And
Mhm.
even if they like their school and their teacher, in the moment, that's not what they're thinking. In the moment, what they're thinking is, I want mommy, I miss mommy, right? And so to get mad at the child, to pressured with the child, that doesn't work. What actually works, and I think this is a deeper, part of answering your question, and tell me if I'm going too far afield, is we have a technique in the first realm that we call bridging. And I took that language from Dr. Neufeld. Bridge what would divide, he calls it. Kids naturally have separation anxiety. Separation anxiety, and we do too, adults do too. But kids naturally have separation anxiety that they just want to focus on who they're going to miss and who they're not going to be with. We have to help them get over that in a way. That's not the right way to say it. We have to learn to help them hold on to us even when they're apart. And so that's why they have a hard time when you're trying to get out the door. That's why they have a hard time before bedtime, and they say they need 13 cups of water and they're still hungry and all these things. They're not thirsty. They're not hungry, not usually. They're just saying, I don't want to go to bed because it feels lonely in here and I feel anxious about it. I don't know how to use those words. So if you understand that's what's going on underneath it, well, then you focus on that. You and your partner, if you have a parenting partner, you just both start talking about, oh my gosh, after school, I'm probably going to give you 15 hugs. I hope you're ready for it because I'm going to build them up all day while mommy's at work. And then after school, you say things like, and most parents do some of this, but after school, you say something like, when mommy was at work today and she was having lunch, she almost couldn't think. She almost couldn't concentrate because she just missed you so much. And I was thinking about what's my little girl doing right now? What's my little boy doing? And what you're doing is you're communicating to your children. If anyone's listening just like audio, I'm holding my hands apart like a gap, right? Your kids are experiencing a gap. You can't argue with that. You can't negotiate with that. They're going, gap, I'm going to miss you. And by bridging, by talking about what happens after the gap, by talking about, I was thinking of you during the gap, you start to build pathways in their brain that start thinking of you more when they're together. When they're not with you. Therefore, my anxiety goes down. Therefore, I don't fight as much when you're trying to get me out the door.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So does that answer your question?
No, it totally does. And I love those examples that you gave because those are exact experiences that I have.
Oh yeah, I'm not new at this.
Yeah.
Every example, I'm just kidding with that, but every example I've learned to talk about is because I've heard it 10,000 times.
And it's also nice to hear. It's like, okay, like I'm not the only one struggling with this.
Oh no.
Getting out the door before bedtime. Like those are the moments. But I love that perspective. It's like, it's like maybe not the accumulatively connections. It's gonna help in the long run and having that
You're
structure.
helping them build the ability to see past separation, and that takes some time. It
Mhm.
just takes some time. But in the meantime, if you learn to do bridging really well, you learn to talk about what happens after we get back together. You talk about, you remember what I said this morning that I was going to give you 15 hugs? When you bridge in the middle by saying, yeah, I was thinking about you all day. Or you do a little thing like you put a note in their lunch that they don't know about and they find it, or a little sticker. How old are your kids?
So I have three kids. One of them is 8.5, and then the other two are twins. They just turned 5.
Okay. When they're that age, there's a book called The Kissing Hand by Audrey Penn that I've recommended for years. And it's just about Chester Raccoon, and he's going to school at night and he's going to miss his mom. And he goes to school in a tree, with an owl, I think, as the teacher. And before she goes, let me tell you the secret of before he goes for the first time, let me tell you the secret of the kissing hand. And she unfolds his hand and gives him a big kiss and says, hold it. Chester Raccoon, I think his name is, and says, anytime during the day that you want a kiss from mommy, it's right there in your hand. And then sometimes your kid thinks about it and goes, oh, kiss from mommy, and they're playing with their friends and they just put their hand on their cheek and they feel it. Sometimes, and I've heard this so many times, they accidentally touch their cheek or something and they go, oh yeah, but it like makes it real for them while they're building up this ability in their head. One thing, if I can just add one more example, that I always loved when I would be up in Canada, because I would go up to Vancouver a lot to train with Dr. Neufeld, is my friends, because most of his interns at the time in our first training group of interns were Canadian. And they talked about, mommy's going to go on a trip this weekend. I'll be gone for 2 sleeps. We don't say that in America that much. Like, It's not that common, but it's awesome because kids relate to that more. When you say be gone for the whole weekend, they go, ah. When you go 2 sleeps, they go, well, that sounds manageable. I'll go to sleep once, I'll go to sleep twice. It like makes more sense to kids. That's also bridging.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then what age do you need to do this bridging? Or is it like this bridging just starts building up, building up, building up, and it can like or do you need to do it all the time?
I'm hesitant to say how old I am. I'm a little older than you. I actually have a birthday coming up in about a week from when we're recording. I'll be 55.
Oh, wow.
Really?
I still, oh, thank you. I was eliciting that. Thank you. I have a
Actually,
nice
today is
filter
my
on.
birthday.
Oh,
Is
is
it?
it? A fellow Leo.
Yeah.
I knew I liked you. Okay, great. That tells everyone when we're recording. My joke where I was leading is I still need bridging. If my partner and I are having a fight, I still want her to say, "Hey, it's going to be okay. I'm going to tell you for the next 5 minutes what a jerk you're being, but I love you and we're going to be fine." That's another way of bridging. You know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
if one of us is going somewhere. So that's just my kind of answer, Anna, that you definitely need to do it throughout childhood in a more pronounced way. Especially, one of the things I quote the most, how your 8-year-old, Wendy, boy or girl?
Boy.
Boy. There's this thing maybe you've heard that there's a Jean Piaget, the famous developmental psychologist, talked about the 5 to 7 shift. That something happens around 7 years old. My kid went to Waldorf school, and the person who founded Waldorf, Rudolf Steiner, said when their baby teeth fall out, something's different, and we should just concentrate on play and things until then. Well, what we know now is their whole frontal lobe doesn't really work until they're like 7, or like boys, I find, are a little behind girls in general. There's not one rule, but in general, I find little girls at 5 sometimes are able to weigh things out, and little boys, I'm expecting more 7 or 8. That's just my experience. But until that happens, they're going to have more pronounced separation anxiety because I don't know if you've seen this. My kid went to a school for kindergarten that he loved. It was awesome. Marin Waldorf School. We ended up going to Sonoma County, a little north, from first grade on to Summerfield Waldorf School, which was one of the best, like just amazing, great school with a farm and all these things. But he had an awesome teacher. He had an awesome school. He loved his friends, but he still sometimes didn't want to go out the door because he wanted to hang out with daddy or he wanted to hang out with mommy, right? And so it's just a little bit more pronounced because what happens is I'm facing separation. That's what I'm thinking about. That's it. I'm not thinking about, oh, wait, but I'm actually going to be with my friends and my teacher and stuff, right? They're thinking, I won't be with mommy. I won't be with daddy. And that's partly a function of how their brain isn't working yet. Does that make sense? And
Mm-hmm.
so, just one answer, Anna, to that question is up until 7 or 8, it's just more pronounced because they are coming out of the womb like, ah, I'm afraid you're not coming back. And until their brain can kind of go, on the one hand, I'm going to miss daddy and mommy, or my parents, or whoever my parents are. But on the other hand, I'll be with my friends, and that's cool too. They can't do that until they're like 7 or 8 years old sometimes. Beyond that, though, it's supposed to be part of the culture of our home that we bridge with each other. You know, I was living in Japan for 6 or 7 months a couple years ago. And one of the only words I knew in Japanese before I went to Japan the first time in 2019 was sayonara, right? And everybody knows the word sayonara. What was strange is when I got there, almost nobody said sayonara because sayonara is like a final goodbye. Like on the last day of school, when they knew I went to language school. I saw my clients in the morning and I went to language school in the afternoon. On the last day of school, it's like, we're not going to see you again. So sayonara. But often it would be like, Wendy, you and I are in a fight. I don't want to see you anymore. I go, sayonara. It's pretty like bye, right? All around the world, you don't say that. It's not bridging. All around the world, they say matane in Japanese, which is okay, bye. I mean, sorry, okay, later, you know, or hasta la vista, or uh, hasta mañana rather, or auf Wiedersehen, or au revoir. They all mean we'll be back, we'll be back. That's bridging, and we just have to be doing that as the culture of our home. And that's why even as an adult, if someone you really love is going somewhere and they're like, okay, goodbye, that might not feel good to you because it's not bridging. So on the one hand, my answer is, hey, do it a lot until they're at least 8 or 9, but keep doing it because we're just supposed to do it. Because it kind of is important in our whole lives.
So
I bet you didn't expect the answer would be that long.
yeah, no. We have a follow-up question. So basically, for everyone, right? We have an example. The kid doesn't want to go to school. So one way to respond is bridging. What if you as a parent potentially can have a flexibility and take a kid with you to work or just spend a day with you? What do you think about this type of response? Will it be good or is it better
Oh,
to...
no, I think that can be fine. Here's the thing is there's different kind of made up controversies in the parenting world sometimes. Like helicopter parenting was a thing everybody was talking about a few years ago. Now everybody's talking about gentle parenting, like it's an awful thing or something. Like
Mhm.
some people like, I believe in gentle parenting, being kind and loving to my child. Well, duh, yeah, of course. And then other people going, that's not, they need limits and boundaries. And attachment theory, attachment science is a very simple premise. And all the work I do is based on attachment science, whether articulated by the founder of it, John Bowlby, or Gordon Neufeld, who is my mentor, or Daniel Siegel, Stan Tatkin, Sue Johnson, people I've worked with who teach it for adults and marriage too. What attachment science says is that the number one thing about how we develop good relationships and how we behave and how we grow into our potential is how secure we feel in our relationships with our caregivers growing up. Does that make sense? And some parents, out of anxiety, and I don't judge these parents, but some parents out of anxiety never let their kids out of their sight because they think they have to protect them at all times. That is anxiety provoking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like if I have a feeling as a mom or a dad that I can't ever let my kid go to school or do, and some people homeschool and great, but if I have the attitude that my kid can't be without me, I'm going to be teaching the kid they can't live without me, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like this process over time that I do want to connect with you first. I do want to build out my morning. Like, you know what I used to do, guys? I don't know if you do it, but I used to be so into like making an awesome breakfast for my kid that I often would be too rushed before I had to get him out of the door, and he wasn't ready for that, right? So if you're focused on connection, you're focused on bridging, and you have a nice, predictable pace and a procedure for how we do things, right? Then your kid should be learning slowly over time to be able to be away from you and hold you in their heart when they're gone because they know you're going to come back together, right? But if as a bonus occasionally you're like, I'm going to take you to work. Cool. But you don't do that as a long-term solution.
Hmm.
You do that as a bonus fun thing. You do that as a like really filling their cup of attachment. I did not see that coming. Oh my goodness, mommy's going to take me to work. That's amazing, you know? But you don't do it to solve separation anxiety in general because what we want to do is create that that knowing inside. Does that make sense?
Mhm. And I guess like another question for me is, um, do you believe in like setting like limits and boundaries and then having a discipline strategy based on
Oh,
like
absolutely. I just find that there's a big misunderstanding about what that is. Um, Discipline is the same root word in Latin as disciple. It means proactive. It means good leader, good teacher. It means avoiding most problems before they happen. Discipline does not mean what you do when your kid does something to make your kid stop doing it. And that's why I use the expression all the time, whack-a-mole parenting, like the game, you know, um, is one kid's doing this. Okay, do something about it. Another kid's doing, okay, do something about it. When I, and again, this is not meant to be self-promoting, but when I walk parents through, okay, let's really focus on attachment and connection for a few weeks. Let's really go deep. Let's really understand what makes this kid tick and help them bridge more, help them feel connected to others more. Okay, let's have more rhythm and ritual and predictability. Let's teach them cause and effect, which is what we call consequences, um, which is really misunderstood. But consequences is the teaching of if this happens, this happens. If this doesn't, this doesn't. That is not punishment. I don't need to punish you to make that point. If you don't eat dinner, you don't get dessert. I am not punishing you. You didn't eat dinner. If you're yelling in the car and I need to pull it over, and that means we have less time at the park you were looking forward to going to, I'm going to let that happen. I'm not punishing you. You were the one melting down in the car. And I had to stop for safety, and because I had to stop for safety, we have less time because we have to get home, right? I'm teaching that in the second realm. But by the time I get to the third realm with parents, they always say the same thing. Todd, we came here for all the discipline stuff, but we're actually not having problems that much. I'm telling you every time because the root of the behavior problems most of the time is I'm not feeling secure in my attachment and I'm not feeling boundaries and things, right? But absolutely, you do need to teach consequences, which is the teaching of cause and effect day to day that I just mentioned. I put that in the environment realm because that's just a day-to-day teaching. That's not a discipline thing. I'm just teaching you. But then in the third realm of discipline, one of the biggest things I teach, which takes several sessions with my clients, is how to set limits. And limits is we all feel frustrated, right? We all have frustration build up inside of us. Sometimes it's a little thing here, it's a little thing there. For us as adults, it usually has to do with finance, career, fulfillment, time, what, right? And we're like, oh, I have this big problem I need to solve, and it's really frustrating me, and my partner's not doing as I want right now, and I don't feel. But for kids, it can be, I have to go to school today, and I'd really rather stay home. I went to school, and that kid wouldn't play with me, you know? And it builds up inside. And when that frustration builds up inside, they need help getting it out. And setting limits in the right way is how you get it out. Does that make sense so far? I have more to say about it, but
yeah,
so
I'm actually really interested in that point because I think when you mentioned the frustration, right? Like I have an older kid and they're younger. I have two younger kids, and I think there's a lot of like frustration points between them, right? But they wanted
yeah.
to, you know, one kid wants to do this, the other kid, and there's creates a lot of frustrations. And then, my older kid would take it out on them and start hitting them because I guess that he doesn't have any way of expressing his frustration. So his only way is really to hit or to push or to get this out, right? So I'm really curious on like your take on that.
Yeah, so that's why I try to change the mindset of parents because so many people who come to me, they're doing well in life. They're I have a lot of people in tech and people that run big companies. I've had celebrities and people come to me, but mostly just like people kind of doing well in life and trying to do the best they can, but then their kid's blowing up and hitting their other kid and they just don't know what to do about it. We all have frustration build up. And the mindset change I'm trying to teach parents is it's not permissive, free range parenting where you never say no because that doesn't help your child. It is not safe, right? Like you need to know where the limits are. You need to know what you can do and not do, right? It helps you feel safe. But it's also not authoritarian yelling and screaming and punishing. That just makes it worse because what's happening inside is I'm already frustrated. If the person in life I love the most, my mom or my dad, is screaming at me, that's not helping my frustration go away, right? And so our job is more of like I always say, like an emotional midwife, right? I have to help you give birth to these feelings. I have to help you let them go, right? And so, what my job is as a parent is, let's say there's a scale of 1 to 10, and I explain this in much more kind of gross descriptive terms sometimes. I call it the septic tank. But for our purposes right now, I'll just say frustration tolerance, right? Or frustration tank. If I'm at a 1 or a 2, you don't really need to set a limit with me. If I'm at a 9 or a 10, I am losing my mind, and it's hard for the most trained, beautiful, patient parent to do anything about it because I'm already getting violent. And if I'm getting violent or aggressive towards my sibling, well, then that puts a parent in a horrible conflict where you kind of want to be attending to your kid who's losing their mind because you know something's wrong, but they're also hitting your other kid, and your job is to protect your kids, right?
Mhm.
So if kids get up to a 9 or a 10 and they're hitting, which is way more common in young kids, again, partly because of brain development, they don't have the angel on their shoulder saying don't hit. They just have the devil going, "Oh, I'm pissed," right? They don't have the thing. Well, then I know my job to set limits with you is to figure out when you're at, I always say, a 6 or a 7. And that's when your kid is being a little irritable. They're being a little pain in the butt. They're poking you. They're demanding a cookie for dinner, and that's all I'm going to eat. And I don't care what you're making, right? And if you go literal with it, you're like, you're insane right now. What are you even talking about? I just worked all day and I'm making food, and you're nuts. Go to, right? But I'm missing an opportunity if I do that. And I'm also missing an opportunity if I just make it all better. Okay, you know what? Here, have a cookie. That's fine. That's good. Okay, we're good. We're good. That kid, and you know this as moms because you've seen it, and parents out there, that kid's gonna blow up in an hour anyway, right? You gave in to try to make it better, but you didn't empty the tank. So they continued to get irritated by their little brother. They continued to get irritated by something, and then their 6 or a 7 went up to a 8 or a 9. Does this all make sense?
Mhm.
So the way we do it is I recognize when you're there. I recognize when you're there. You're not all the way too far. You're also not just in a little bit. You're starting to poke. And I go, okay, it's on. Sorry to clap if that was loud. I talk to my parenting partner if I can. Hey, by the way, this one needs limits. Be ready. We have to be prepared, right? Because otherwise it turns into a fight between the parents. Will you take care of your son? He's not my son right now. He's yours. You're the one who had him all, right? You've never heard that, right? Okay, yeah, I see the recognition in your eyes. You heard of somebody who went through that. It wasn't you.
Oh, I do
Um,
this all the time. I'm like, you
yeah,
had him the whole day. You caused this.
right. So the thing is somebody has to engage with the kid.
Mm.
And the bottom line, cheat notes, crib notes is you have to be very, very firm and clear and say no to this child and say it repeatedly and be firm and stick to it. But you also have to have the added element of being compassionate. You have to be kind. That's a hard dance to figure out. And if you have 3 kids, Wendy, each one of them, the dance is going to be a little different. But your job is to figure out, okay, what are my main things? I have to say no. I have to mean no. I have to stick to my no. But every little bit here, I'm going to go, honey, I love you. I will always love you no matter how frustrated you get. But you're not getting a cookie no matter what you do. I'm going to raise holy hell. No, okay. You're not allowed to destroy property, and you're not allowed to take it out on your sibling. But go ahead, lose your mind. Go ahead, get it out. Just invite it, right? But
Mhm.
usually it's a little dance we do of no, I love you. I get it, but no, I love you. I know you want it, but no. And we're just kind of doing that. Guys, you would probably do it with a friend who is losing their mind. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if you had a friend who was just like, I'm gonna go home right now and tell my husband that I am just sick of his bull, and I was like, sweetie, you've had a couple glasses of wine. That wouldn't be productive, but I'm going to. No, you're not. I am going to right now. Look, I'm your friend. I love you, but stop it. No, right?
Yeah.
And you do that, and what might happen with your friend? What happens with your kid if you do that right? They cry. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They can't get out of it. They're trying to find ways to get you to change your mind, and you won't, and you just stay with it, and you're kind, so they can't just think you're being a jerk. Okay, she loves me, but she's saying no, and she's not going to change her mind. And then I accept it, and I cry, and I release. And how do you feel after you've had a good cry?
Back to their
Again, you
foot.
have several kids. Like
Yeah.
when you go through this with your kids, sometimes parents get there accidentally,
Mm-hmm.
because they're just frustrated and they keep saying no, and finally their kid gets it. And then their kid cries, and then all of a sudden that same kid who's losing their mind's like, I love you, mommy. I want to go to bed. And you're like, what just happened? It's because they got it out. They got it out. And your kids need thousands of reps of getting that out.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids need to go through that a lot. They need to feel yucky feelings. They need to feel them. They need to not get away from them, and they need to release them. And that's how you create adaptive, resilient kids. Okay. And I work again. I'm not like only working with super wealthy or whatever, but I tend to work with people that are professionals, dual income. Again, like I'm in the Bay Area, San Francisco, Marin County, tech people, but also people everywhere. And they're trying their very best, and their kids are melting down, and then they're feeling like they're bad parents for it. I lost part of my thread there, but does that all make sense to you guys?
Mm-hmm.
It's
You
totally
know?
actually like
But I
yeah.
think I was gonna say those parents are trying really, really hard not to upset their kids, and that doesn't
Oh,
help. Yeah, you're saying.
sorry, yeah, I just wanted to kind of relate to everything we just talked about because I feel like your strategies that you provide are very, very like fundamental. And it connects me with a recent conversation that I had with like older generation about the technology and kids, right? How our phones, social media influence kids emotionally. But at the end of the day, we came to a conclusion on like that the most the best way to really help your kid with technology and getting this resistance from
Mhm.
influence, which can be very negative, is actually just being confident and secure. And like this fundamental skill will help them to, yeah, to just not.
What adults do when they're feeling confident and secure? They're creative. They solve problems. What do adults do when they're feeling really anxious? Obsess on my phone, you know, doom scroll on social
Yeah, yeah,
media. You know, we all have a deep attachment instinct. We all want to be connected to those we love. We want to feel that inside, whether we're with them right now or not. And when we don't feel that, and when we feel anxiety, we turn to other things. I don't have like some kind of fundamental problem with technology is like technology is evil. I grew up in San Jose, California, like in the dot-com boom, right? Half my friends are millionaires from working at these companies, and I grew up, I was involved in like I was on the junior board of directors for, did you guys have Pizza Time Theater, Chuck E. Cheese up there? No? It was like this arcade that had pizza, and you'd go there and play games, right? I was on the junior board of directors when I was 13. I was on a documentary about kids in America who were into computers on the BBC when I was like 10 or 11 or something, right? I wasn't that good at computers. They just put me in it. But I'm not fundamentally against technology per se, and I love technology. I've heard some of the topics you guys talk about. It's that we don't want kids turning to technology before they're ready for it. That's the simple thing. It's like you don't have dessert until you've had dinner kind of thing again. I want to see a kid who's creative. I want to see a kid who can problem solve. I want to see a kid whose attachment needs are met, that they're not turning to technology to replace what they're not getting somewhere else. They feel connected. They're good problem solvers. They're creative. And then they use technology from that place. But the younger kids they're usually not in that place. They're using it like adults do when they're anxious to try to substitute. Does that make sense? Right? I'm going to go look at how everyone else is being creative, but I'm actually not learning to be creative. I'm going to look at how other people are solving problems, but I'm not developing inside the ability to solve problems. I don't feel secure inside, so I'm going to try to like find it by getting likes. You know, when MySpace was new, I was working with kids in foster care, severely emotionally disturbed kids who were in foster care. And I love these kids, but they started asking me to go to the library more. And I'm like, awesome, library, let's go. What I found out was MySpace was new. Do you guys remember MySpace or hearing of MySpace, right?
This was my first social media. I was in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these kids were under the illusion that they had 5,000 friends. And that's why they wanted to go to the library. They wanted to log on to the computers at the library to like get more friends. And they were not having meaningful interaction with anybody. They weren't meaningfully interacting with each other. Like it used to be, we'd go to the pool and they'd play together sometimes, or we'd go on a hike, or we'd do whatever. But now they were just sitting in the computer like, I have 5,000 friends. I have 200 friends. Well, I am obviously better than you are, right? And it was like this fake thing, right? These kids were awesome. I still run into a couple of them in the community sometimes. And I'm on social media with one of them, who's in his 30s now. But yeah, so that's my attitude about technology is I want to see that my kid has a functioning brain first and is secure in their attachments, and then maybe I introduce this stuff to them. But right now, one of the top questions I ever get, guys, from my clients, and I've had over 2,000 clients in 22 years, is my kid is addicted to technology. How do I put the genie back in the box? And I tell them how to approach it and try to do it, but it's way easier if you don't let the genie out of the box in the first place, meaning you just take your time. My kids' school, they didn't allow the kids to have smartphones until they were in eighth grade, you know? And we all made it. And I'm not saying this is for everybody, but look up articles about Waldorf School in Silicon Valley. A lot of people like Steve Jobs was like developing an iPad and at the same time sending his kid to a school that they weren't allowed, you know? And some of the top people in tech send their kids to schools where they can't use tech, you know? Not all of them, obviously, but and so that's a lot of answer, Anna. We could talk for hours about that. Maybe I'll come back sometime and we'll just talk about tech. But I took my kid to his first movie when he was 12. And I don't think that should be what everybody does. It just, we didn't think about it. It was just like at first, it was like no movies and TV really. We're not going to do that. I want him to have a good imagination. After a while, it just became we forgot about it and he wasn't asking about it. And then he was like, his 12th birthday, it was like, oh, BFG, the story by Roald Dahl. He loved Roald Dahl, you know, James and the Giant Peach and Willy Wonka and stuff. He had a book called BFG, and Steven Spielberg put out a version of it. We went to the movie theater, and he watched it, and I loved his answer at the end of how'd you like it? He said, "Well, I imagined it this way, and I like it better the way I imagined it, but I like the way he did that." Does that make sense to you? Like he was able to like have his own pictures in his head still, even though he could appreciate what the other person was doing. That's the kind of thing I want to see kids doing. So if you have any follow-ups, let me know. But
Yeah, like I'm actually curious, like for does that kind of go alongside with like tablet, like Nintendo Switch or PS4, 5? Like, do you have any recommendations? Because I'm I don't know when to introduce it because like that's when like my kid's been asking, but I'm not a huge fan of like, video games and things like that, right? Like,
I
what do you
would I
think of
would
that?
honor what you feel, and I would not ever fall prey to but everyone else is doing it thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I would build out communities, meaning like cohorts of people and friends. Like I went to a school, my kid went to a school that we all had the same agreement. If I send my kid over to your school, your kid's house, they're not going to be on technology. If you send them to mine, they're not. And it was just a nice agreement, just knowing that, right? And you can create that. You can create a group of little friends. And you know what my and his friends did? They just played. They
Mm-hmm.
just went and like when I was little, even though I grew up in Silicon Valley, we didn't have anything until I was like 12 or 13, you know? We had Atari Pong, you know? Again, aging myself. So I would just say like just read The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, best New York Times bestseller last year. The rates of anxiety and depression in teenagers has gone off the chart in the last 10 years. Off the chart. And I spent so much time trying not to be up on a soapbox and being like, guys, you know, it's rotting your kid's brain. And I still don't feel that way. But it's getting a little urgent that kids are really getting so drawn to these things. And
Mm-hmm.
what happens is, whether it's Switch, iPad, whatever, a lot of the stuff, it's raising their serotonin levels. And when you raise the serotonin levels, now I have to have that level of serotonin or it's boring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the main practical traps you want to stay out of, right?
Mm-hmm.
It works on the same pathways as addiction and other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody takes cocaine, their serotonin levels go off the charts, but then they have to use it just to try to get back to a baseline. You know, they have to try to just feel okay. When your kid's on screens, what you're just going to notice is you go, hey, let's go out and play. And they're like, no, I don't want to. It's boring.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's go on a hike. I don't want to. It's boring because they're not getting the serotonin rush, right? So I would just say my experience, guys, and one of the most hopeful things I can tell you, and it's true, kids would rather sit around and play a board game with you. They would rather have connection time. They're doing the technology a lot to fill the vacuum. And so, yes, we're busy. Yes, we have things to do, but just schedule some more things. Schedule things with other parents sometimes that, like, I can send my kid to your house, you can send them to mine. They're going to go play by the creek. You know, try to come up with as many things as you can that are creative, you know, drawing, painting, building, things like this. And kids love that, you know? Um, Again, I was born at a time where that wasn't even an option, right? I'm not that old. Like we just went and played at the houses that were being constructed in our neighborhood in San Jose, you know? Maybe not the safest thing in the world, but we'd go run up and down the stairs of these houses. We'd go to the Quicksilver Creek Park and go look at everything and we'd play games. That's still in your kids. Just try to find those alternatives, you know?
Yeah. No, that's a really good tip. One last question for me, Todd. I think all the things you mentioned, I really love. I think
Great.
where the biggest struggle that I have is like, how do I stay calm and confident when I'm being challenged?
It's a tough one. And again, we could really go deep on that for hours, you know, because that's one of the main questions parents come to me with. Um, my assistant, woman who kind of helps me with my logistics and everything, scheduling. I used to have her do this survey every year where she'd put out something about like, what's your main problems, you know? And we stopped doing it because it was the same every time. And it was like 500 parents. And I've told people this before, like, I try to be a really good parent. I'm trying my best. I love my kids. I don't want to be a jerk, but they won't listen to me sometimes and they won't cooperate. And I lose my patience and I raise my voice or I yell at them. And then I feel guilty and I like feel like I'm screwing them up and I'm just being my parent or whatever, you know?
Mhm.
And that's just a common universal thing, you know? Part of what I was going to say before I lost the thread about a little bit. I have all these people like in Marin County, like one of the most affluent places in the world. That's where I started my practice. I'm a little north of that now, but still have a lot of people there. They would come into my office and go, nobody else is having these problems. I'm having these problems. And I wanted to tell them and I couldn't because confidentiality. I'm like, your friends were just here. You know, I'm seeing like 15 people in your school right now. Like, it's not just you, you know, just everybody thinks that. Um, the most simple answer, Wendy, is you know that cliche that you hear all the time about you have to put your oxygen mask on first before your kids, right? That's real. We all are trying to do our best. We're busy. We want to have careers. We want to have fulfilling lives. We want to have good relationships. We want to have friends. We want to be social. We want all these things. And that's fine. I don't know anybody. I don't work with anybody who's like, I just have tons of extra time. What should I do? I don't know that person. I'm certainly not that person. I have like 8 things today, you know? But I would challenge you, and you haven't even said this, that you don't have 10 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night where you can't meditate. You can't listen to the Calm app and do breathing exercises. You can't go take a walk first thing in the morning, maybe with one of your kids. So you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You might have time some days in the week, going out and getting daylight exposure, 15, 20 minutes. Huberman Lab talks about this all the time. Is good for your balance, good for your mood, good for your sleep. Find those things. Put your mask on first. Me personally, I have more time now. I don't have a child in the house. So please understand that would be your objection to what I'm about to say. But I go for an hour-long walk in the morning where I also listen to a podcast, usually Japanese. I work out 3 times a week. I meditate once or twice a day for 20 minutes where I just try to sit and calmly. There's things like non-sleep deep rest or yoga nidra. You can listen to YouTube videos, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Do that. You have to charge your battery. You're not helping your children. You're not helping yourself. So regulating your nervous system by learning simple techniques you can do reliably, predictably. One of the most common ones, Wendy, that I tell people all the time is 4-7-8 breathing. It sounds so simple. I wish I could charge you $1,000 to teach it to you, but I can teach it to you in 10 seconds and that wouldn't feel fair to you. You breathe in deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. You hold it 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you breathe out of your mouth to the count of 8. Now, if you haven't done this a lot, it might take you a little bit to get that exact rhythm. Don't worry about it. Just work towards it. If you're not used to doing that, but you're breathing into your belly. You're not breathing into your chest. You're breathing into your belly. When you breathe into your chest, you're telling your nervous system that you're in stress. You breathe in. Everybody said, hold in your belly. No. Blow it up like a balloon when you breathe in. Hold it and then let it out slowly. That is one of the simplest things you can do that costs you 0 money, that you can do on your commute, that you can do in between things, that will calm your nervous system. And especially before you transition to going home or being with your kids again, have that kind of ritual. Again, if we were being real, we can go into all the different things that might contribute to that in your life versus my life or Anna's life, right? Like we might all have different factors. But the number one thing is your nervous system regulation is real. There are real things you can do and do them. But find what yours is and do it every day. But then the main other thing that I've been trying to do the rest of the time here, and the reason why I'm saying yes to podcasts and things now, I miss public talks. I used to do public talks all the time. And I loved the dialogue and talking to folks like you, where it's not my clients, it's just a dialogue with other people who are interested. What was I saying? I'm losing the thread. Gosh, I've done that like 3 times this week. What was I saying right before that?
I was just talking to other people that aren't your clients, and then we were talking
Oh
about
yeah. But it's just like taking like the point I was going to make, thank you, gave me time to get it back, is senior moment, is education. Educate yourself. Because a lot of what is upsetting you or making you feel bad or dysregulating you is not knowing what's going on. Okay? Why is my kid doing this? So what I try to do when I'm doing these things is I'm trying to fill in those blanks as much as I can. I can't do it all in a half an hour. I take 3 months to do it with the parents I work with. But if you know, oh, my kid doesn't have a functioning frontal lobe, which means that they can't focus on two things at once, which means if I walk up behind them and try to tell them what to do, they can't even hear me. If you know that, that might keep you from getting dysregulated in that moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'd say
No.
have regulation rituals that you do to take care of yourself, but also educate yourself. That's why podcasts like this are great, is because people who you guys relate to, who relate to you, are like coming together in a new forum, newish forum, and going, we want to learn more. We want to like grow. We want to figure things out. And the more you figure things out, the less vacuum there is to fill in with all your yucky stuff.
No, I really appreciate that. And one of the things I do is like look at my kids' hands, like how little they are, right? Like
Hmm.
that helps me like calm down at least. Like I'm like, you're so little, like, exactly. I don't know about the frontal lobe, and that's a really good point. But like to me, that was how I try to stay calm, just by
Yeah.
looking at their hands because it's so tiny.
Any little thing that gives you what we call a pause point,
Yeah.
anything that just creates that little pause in your brain where you don't react, you actually can think that you have choices, you know? I find one of the most powerful things for that is going into it with a calm nervous system. But the other best thing for that is education, right? Because once they become 4 or 5, people start projecting all these abilities upon them that they don't have. They don't. They just don't have them, right? And you should be able to use your words. You should be able to handle yourself, you know? And if that's where you're coming from, you naturally feel a little bit more irritable. But if you're going, oh, you're so little. Oh, I forgot you're so little. Then you remember your role, and your role is a guide. Your role is a teacher. Your role is a leader. Your role is not like a taskmaster or a
Mhm.
dictator.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I hope that everyone can relate. And this is exactly why we are doing this podcast. Sometimes we might not even give tips, but we just at least want to tell parents, hey, we feel the same every day. You're not
Oh,
alone.
so valuable. So valuable.
But I think I have the final question for this, for our conversation today. And
Yes.
Todd, you like I listened to you and I learned so much right now. And you seem like you're a perfect parent. Like you,
Oh God, no.
so maybe you can just break this illusion if you're interested and maybe tell us like what was your biggest struggle when your kids were like living with you and you were.
Oh no, I'm not perfect at all. I've never met a perfect parent. And the whole concept is just ridiculous. I
So
find
let's
that
let's break it.
moms, yeah, I find moms beat themselves up more about trying to be perfect than dads sometimes. It doesn't mean us dads don't care. It just means I think there's just added societal pressure and social pressure on moms to have things more figured out, where dad comes home sometimes and let's go play, and it's like, again, I
Absolutely.
deeply believe fathers, both parents are really important. Um, it's just not about perfect. I was so scared to be a dad and so scared of all the things that I didn't know that I partly went into this because like talking to parents like you all day keeps me in the game, keeps my head in it, right? And so I think we let go of perfect. I'm not perfect, and nobody is better for your kid than you. Not me, not anybody up on my wall, not the most popular person now on Instagram or whatever. Um, they're not the answer for your kid. You are, just by being the parent. And so I would say just move in the right direction. Just learn a roadmap, follow good guides, trust your intuition, don't listen to everybody else, and know that you can't be a perfect parent, and that wouldn't be good for your kids either. They need you to make mistakes, but then they need you to care about correcting them. And if you're making them every day, like every single day, I'm having the same problem before we go to school or whatever, then they need you to dig a little deeper and figure out why that's happening every day. and not blaming them on it. That's what kids need. Okay? They don't need some kind of perfect existence. That's not real. And they would have a hard time in the world if they expected everybody at work and everybody who's my friend and everybody who I'm in a love relationship is perfect. They would be sorely let down, right? We don't need to be perfect. We need to care, and we need to put relationship first, and we need to build a good culture around us and our kids to help support us, so it's not all on us. It's held by kind of a little bit more community and culture. But then we need to like also regulate ourselves and learn to regulate them. That's your job. And just listening to things like this, being hosts of a podcast like this, um, talking to other parents and getting together in little groups to talk about it, that's the path.
Okay, sounds like an amazing advice. Very difficult to achieve, but
But just work on it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's like parenting. I think throughout this conversation, it's like we just need to understand that like we can't be perfect. And like I think how we started, there's no playbook. I think you've kind of learned through it. And I think if you put in the best effort and then work on yourself as well, because I feel like when I started parenting and when I saw my kids having these challenges, I'm like, oh, there's something wrong that I need to fix on my kid, right? But like you said, it's really not. So, fixing through that and trying to fix yourself as well. I think through that parenting journey, I
Yeah.
think that was really valuable, Todd. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. You know,
Good, good.
it's a good reminder too, because like I've read a lot of parenting books. I'm trying to be a better parent and things like that. But I think how you mentioned it and how you talked about it was very digestible. So really appreciate it.
Good. Good,
Yeah,
good,
no.
good. I'm
And I
I'm so
hope,
glad.
yeah, and I hope our audience now was able to do the same. So, Todd, again, thank you so much for being a part of this podcast. And how can people reach you if they have any questions?
Yeah, pr pretty much our website, transformativeparenting.com, is the portal for everything. If people just want links to free resources like our YouTube channel, I've put a lot into the YouTube channel trying to answer a lot of the most common, questions. I started it when I was living in Japan, so some of those early videos, it's like in a very Japanese living room. That was my office. Um, and if people are interested in working with us, that's the gateway. We don't take on a lot of clients, but when we do, they usually go to our website, learn a little bit more. We have a master class on there that's 20 or 30 minutes that teaches you some of our main philosophies. And people who are interested in working with us usually go through an application process there. But one way or another, YouTube, social media, usually it's tea parenting on most social media, Facebook tea parenting, Instagram tea parenting. Haven't been doing that stuff a ton, but I have people in my life on my team that are poking me every day, do more things, Todd. So you'll see more and more stuff out there.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thanks again for tuning in. And again, please like and subscribe, Sassy Moms, and we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.